This is part 2 of starting from scratch, and I'm picking it up from where part 1 ended with making the getting the plans in to scale into Gmax. And one thing you must make sure of when you're, whichever view you're in when you're doing this, is make sure you have texture correction ticked. If I untick it, you'll see you get a distortion, so you definitely need that tick to get the exact correct view of the diagrams. And following on from that, I'm going to introduce a new texture, and I'm going to just call this one I'll call it Steve, because it's just my test texture, and rather the version that I created. You can see I was working in Sampari, and here we are, and it'll be a TGA file. Absolutely essential to use TGAs. These can be very big indeed. You can see, look, 16 megabytes. That's too big. This is my version of it, and even then I've left a lot of space for other detail, and it's just 1 megabyte. Okay, and let's just make sure it's all. Yep, that is clicked, so we've got it active here, the little red dot. Okay, so what am I going to do? Well, if I go into, where are we? If I go into here, and I'm going to open up using Windows Viewer. This is Northern Pacific. This is the carriage. Now, as I mentioned in my comment at the end of the comment I posted with the video, I'm not going to bother about doing all this detail. I mean, I'm just going to do the basics to show you how to get the mesh going. And for this one, I'm not sure if there's a colour version. Well, yeah, there's a colour version. There's a better one. Oh, there's a nice one. So this is the baggage car, and despite looking like, you know, it's pretty straightforward, what you want to do, and you could just make it in one block, what you want to do is to make it in a number of separate meshes, because then that gives you the flexibility to change things, but also it saves you from having to go back and remake the whole thing if you hit a minor error, which can banjax the whole thing. Banjax, of course, is my technical term for messing the whole thing up. So you might think there, and let's just make that a bit bigger. Let's just enlarge that a bit. Where are we? There we are. Okay, you might think that the obvious thing to do here is just to make a single mesh of all the side and the roof all together, and then just drop the doors in. Well, I don't do that. So my method of doing this, and that's what I'm explaining, is for this side I immediately see that I want to do 3 separate meshes for the side, and it'll be a lower mesh, a waistband mesh, and an upper mesh, and I'll just be leaving holes for the doors to go in. And if we have a look, I think that looks like it's about a, well, we'll see when we look at the top down view, but it's about 6-inch recess, something like that. Now what you can do with this is, once you have those meshes, you can texture the upper mesh this green. Oh, it's a lovely car, these two-tone green, I really like it. You can texture the whole of that mesh green, and then you can add a plane just sitting slightly in front of it with the words Northern Pacific on, and the same for the roundel here, and indeed for some of these other details. So this coloration, this colouring, can be quite a small TGA file, a really small TGA file. 32 by 32 is adequate, and then a separate one for the waistband, a separate TGA file, and a separate TGA file for the lower, for this green, and you just paint the whole thing uniformly. Anyway, I've combined it all together into one test texture, which I called Steve, where I've got bits of all these in, but it's up to you what you do. What you can do, of course, is to make these, any text, any nice graphics, any numbering, really much higher res, and go up to about 1024 width in the TGA. Okay, so what does all that mean? Well, let's have a look at our model, or what's going to be our model. Let's zoom in. So we're looking at a side view, and I'm going to make sure we've got texture correct on. Okay, and another thing we need to do is make sure if I've got the, where are we? No, that's the wrong, we'll leave that one there, and I'll just open up another folder, where are we, which has got these diagrams in, and you can see that it's a guy called Ian who's commented on the YouTube video that I've offered to show for this. Okay, so why am I doing this? Why am I bringing this up? Well, what I want to do is to get the exact width here. Okay, I mean I can just trace that, but I suspect I can do better, and I can do better by using this measurement here, 71 foot 8 inches, and then the width, if we go back, is 10 foot. Okay, that's the width at the end, but here, let's zoom in, and we know that the side has got to be 11 foot 3 7/8 inches, oh dear, minus 3 foot 6 1/4 inches. Okay, well my maths is hopeless, so I reckon that's what's that, that's 7 foot 7 foot 9, 7 foot 9 and 3/8, 7 foot 9 and 3/8. 7 foot 9 and 3/8 is really not much use to us, except what we can do is change the unit setup just for this, fractional inches, decimal inches, let's have a look, 1/8 of an inch, okay, 7 foot 9 and 3/8. What I'm going to use to make the mesh is a spline, and when I started doing models for trains I never used to use splines. I didn't really know what they were for. I found them sort of quite awkward to use. 7 foot 9 and 3/8. So I'm going to draw a rectangle, and I'm going to make it, ignore where it says length width, it's just whichever one you're dealing with. 7 foot 9 space 3 slice 8. 7 foot 9 and 3/8. And the other measure that we had was the top down view, 71 foot 8 inches. 71 foot 8 inches. Okay, so that's the whole thing, isn't it? That's the whole of the side without any of that different panels. And I can immediately see a problem because I need to know how high the green comes, how high the waistband is. So I need more information than is contained on this. And basically what I'm going to have to do is guess it. And I'm going to have to guess it by looking at a photograph and seeing how far this comes up. It's just to the waistband. There's the handle, which is marked, so it's just down below. There's a similar sort of gap between there and there and there and there. Okay, we'll try and work with that. So it's going to be down here, about there. First and foremost, let's get this positioned, and I prefer using decimal inches. So there we are, as opposed to metric. And so now we've got a rectangle which is actually 7 foot 9.375, which is of course the correct decimal inches. Okay, so let's drop this mesh down. This is just our running mesh, it's not going to be a finish mesh at all. Let's just have a look and see how it fits. Let's make it a bit more obvious, change the colour. Not very good, change it to yellow. Okay, so I'm just seeing how it fits. Well, first of all, 71 foot 8 inches takes us into the corridor connection. It's bigger here. So I suspect the way in which I've put this texture on isn't close enough. So what I'm going to do is pick up the two end pieces. I'm going to zoom in to the end, and you can see it's over a bit. In fact, it's probably over a fair bit, so I'm going to take it up to about there, and let's have a look at the other end. This is crucial at this stage. You've got to get this right. If you don't get it right, the whole model is going to be too long. So don't worry about, because this is a pixelated line, so I'm only estimating where it would appear on that line. Let's have a look now. Let's see how we're doing now. Are we any better? We are. You can see straight away that the yellow line is more or less accurately now where it should be. It's because I've just bunched that out, and you can actually see there that it's inside. So this is not the way in which I've edited this. It is not precisely in place. So I'm just going to look back there. This might all seem a drag, and all you want to do is see the carriage running tough. This is what you need to do. So I've allowed 2 pixels. You can see your individual pixels there. I've allowed 2 pixels there, and let's see, 2 pixels up here to try and get that position just right. That's 1, that's 2 there. Zoom in a bit more, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 pixels to each side. Okay, are we any better? We look pretty good. Let's just leave that. We look pretty good there, and pretty good there. You probably hear still not right. I'll make sure that that is centered. Yes, it definitely is. That's just the position back, and that's the height position. So I'm going to live with that because I'm within a pixel there. But I know that the yellow box is correct, and it's from that yellow box that I'm going to make the other splines. So at the moment it's a rectangle in amongst splines. So first what I want to do is to clone it, and I'm going to make it a different colour so as to identify it. Let's make it red, and I'm going to convert it to an editable spline. And these are the things that I found the most useful. Discovered the reason for splines some while back now. And take this up until I feel it is visually correct. Because if we look at our photograph again, looking right in there, we've got about the same width of that up above there, and then we've got the actual knob. So I think, looking at that, there's the actual knob, and I'm going to have the same width. So then the waist spline is going to be in there, and there it is. There's the red. So I'm going to take that, and let's just check the height of that. What I like to do is to keep these, so check one at a time rather. 6'6", 004. So I'm going to take the 004 out. 6'6". Once you hit on an obviously complete number like that, I would tidy it up like that. And I think so if I'm going to clone this one again. Where are we? Picking up the wrong thing here. I'm going to clone this one, the red one. Okay, and I'm going to take this down to 6'4". Also I'm going to change the colour to blue, and just take it down 6'4" along here. Why am I spending all this time doing this when I could just bash away, bang out a mesh, which has got holes in it, it'll be a nightmare to texture. Absolute nightmare. Now I don't think that's wide enough, but I'm going to live with that for the moment because I'm going to adjust the upper points. I'm going to bring those down to 6'6", and I can see that those upper ones, if you can hear traffic in the background by the way, it's because I've got all the windows open, because it is very, very warm here in Belfast today. I mean, not as warm as it's been in the Mediterranean, but for Belfast, pretty warm. Okay, so I'm going to increase the depth of that waistband by decreasing the height of those two, because I think that's a more accurate. This is why I'm saying this method of using meshes, splines and meshes in this way, is the best way to go, because it is very very flexible. Okay, so that's that, and then let me just check the yellow mesh, which is here. So the yellow mesh, convert it to a spline, pick up the vertices, first one, and I'm going to drop that down to 6'3", and the other one down to 6'3". I'm going to go into wireframe mode in a minute, so you'll see what this is all about. The upper one, I don't like the way it's all over there. Let's just see our height. Yes, I'm going to trim out that that fraction of an inch. I try to keep it to whole inches or halves, that sort of thing. And let's just look at the bottom one and see where we are. I suspect it'd be an odd amount as well. 36666. Well, we don't want that. I think drop it down to 3'6". See it there? 3'6". I think that's the correct. And that allows, that drop there compensates for the drop at the top. Okay, so I said we go into wireframe mode. Here we are. Let's have a look at it in wireframe. Well, you can see it in the perspective mode. You don't need to go into wireframe mode. And you can see that what we've got here are 3 rectangles. There's something odd happening here, but we've got an upper, a middle and a lower. So let's check these ones out, and I suspect that what the problem is there is the, let's go back into here, I'm leaving it in wireframe mode. What the problem is here, you can see there it's sticking up. That's definitely not what we want, and that's the reason why, because we've got enormous, I forget what these things are called now, but they're the ones that control angles, that sort of thing, and there's one sticking right up there, so we take that down. And there we are, that's that mesh corrected. Let's just make sure this one's okay. So it's pointing way below the bottom of the mesh, so we don't want that, so take it right up, and then looking at the bottom one is going way up. So there we are, and you can actually see there the bounding box, the white box, has corrected. Let's just make sure we don't have any problems here. No, I don't think so. Or on this one, on the vertices, no, not too bad. We're just about in there. You've got to keep these handles within the box that you're drawing, or within the outline. Otherwise, when you come to extrude, which is the other tool we'll be using with these meshes, you hit all sorts of problems. Well, it doesn't extrude properly, basically. Boil it down. Okay, so there we are. So, well, that's it really, isn't it? We've got our 3 meshes, but of course that's not the whole process. What I will do though is I'll just show you this, because I can go back and just save it first. Always a good idea. I save 2 copies. Believe me, you will not regret it if you save 2 copies. So, for example, if I was to extrude that one, and you want to, I mean it's extruded nothing at the moment, give it at least an inch. except for this we said we wanted about a 6-inch cavity, didn't we? So let's make it an extrusion of 6 inches, and it's come forward, so we'll give it a minus figure because we want to set it back. And then there's the blue one, which is actually the waistband. We'll extrude that. These colours are meaningless as far as the final model is concerned. These are just for use within Gmax, and I like to use bright separate colours, rainbow colours, because it really helps with the identifying, especially when you zoom in. So here's that spoof texture that I did. Steve, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to texture it, and the whole side needs to be that darker green, so the whole thing can be that darker green. So let's edit it, and it's this bit here. So I'm just going to take the whole of that side, shrink it right the way down, whee, and move it over. Okay, and then I'm going to take and close that. The waistband, do the same thing. Okay, make sure it's all there. And for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move up, because the waistband's up there, partly anyway. I'm going to take it up, and then I'm going to proportionately shrink its width. Let's move it over. Can extend that back out a bit. And then for the lower green, well, you know what's going to happen. And it's down here, look. Now this Northern Pacific lettering, that could be much, much sharper. Much bigger texture than this. This should just be your sort of like block colours, a few special textures, that sort of thing in this. And this is at 512 by 512, which even for this is probably too big. Okay, so let's have a look. There we are, we've got our colours. Ain't that sweet? Right, well the only problem is, of course, we've no holes for the doors. We haven't done anything else really super helpful. And also there's some odd little bits of white shown there, so that needs tidying up. So let's step back. I'm just going to step back. I don't know how many times it will do it for me. Not many times. So all I'm going to do is delete and delete the extrusion, and again delete and where's my something else, and delete the extrusion here. And what you find when you do that is they change colour to this sort of, you know, whatever colour they're meant to be, they don't appear like that. Doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm going to just do a bit of editing now of these meshes, and the first thing I want to do is to cut the holes for the door, make sure I have the holes for the door. And the way I do that, again, could use the good old splines and draw one out following the plan. And it's 6'2", which sounds right. Don't like that ½ an inch. 7'11", that looks like 8 foot to me. You might think I'm being, you know, fast and loose with the measurements, but frankly in trains a fraction of an inch isn't going to make a lot of difference. And unless you have a whole clatter of rivet counters chasing you, well, that's their problem. So having done the door, I've cloned it, taken it along, and I'm just going to reduce it until the width of this one, until it fits this second pair of doors. So it was 8 foot, so let's take it down to, looks to me like 6 foot. No, it's not far out, is it? And I'm just positioning that by eye, moving, yeah, 6 foot. Okay, right. So back into here, what I'm going to do is the top one, I should just take one of these, I think Y coordinates what I want. No, it's always the wrong way. X. Take it back a bit, you'll see why. It'll all become clear. This is my methodical, steady method for doing these sort of things. So there's a reason for doing this. On this one, this is a rectangle. Convert it to a spline, and again spline. Remember, you've got spare copies here just in case you need it, because believe me, I make mistakes all the time, constantly make mistakes, and I have to go back and redo things, start again, and so this is the best way of doing things, I find, for me. So I've highlighted the upper mesh and these two door meshes. I'm going to hide everything that I don't need, and I think you might be able to guess what I'm going to do. I know that let's go this way, it's nearer. Let's just remind ourselves of the height. Can't remember the height. 6'6". Oh, that's easy. So on these, I've chopped off out the bottom segment. That was by picking up segment here and just selecting it and delete. Now I want the vertices, so that's going to be 6'6", and that's going to be 6'6", and let's leave that for the moment. Do this one, and this is the point where you think, can't I just grab hold of somebody else's model and just retexture it, reskin it? Well, you can. Won't be as good, because it won't be yours. You won't have the satisfaction of doing this, making something. And here I'm into vertices, and I want to refine the vertices. That is, I'm going to add in some dots, some points along the bottom line. And now at segments, I've got a segment there. Can you see where I'm going with this? I'm sure you can. So we don't need the bounding box, but what we do need, why are we getting that there? That must be what's that? Oh, that's the bounding box I'm looking at. Oh dear. Bring it along, lined up. If you want to go right in, zoom right in. It's a good idea, as much as it will zoom in to get that positioned correctly. And this one, and let's zoom right in. And again with our other, so this is just making the hole for the in the upper mesh for the doors. Nothing really strange or startling or complicated about it. Bring it in and zoom right in to get it positioned correctly. Right, so I'm zooming in and out using the wheel on the mouse. So now let's attach this one and this one, and because we previously worked on it, they go grey, and then we just need to, well, now the train's front end on this always loads it to welding at almost 4 inches apart. That's way too far apart. We don't want that. I go 0.1 of an inch. And so I'm welding all those together. Okay, and now if we extrude it again, all of the my texturing of course has been blown, but let's sort that out. There we go. Let's unhide everything. And you can see what I've got there is the upper part of the carriage with the space for the doors, and I'm keeping copies of those because I'm going to use those for both as a guide and as part of the modelling for the doors. Now all I need to do, and I'm not going to do it in this video, is I just need to reduce the width of this to line it up with that, make a clone of it, move it along, and do so. I've got to replace this single mesh single what is it called, editable spline with 3 to make those pieces fit there. And on the lower piece I've got to chop out bits like that so that it extrudes with that, and that then gives us our sides. And these can be, this way of doing it can give you a lot of detail for very little hit as regards to textures, because the texture I'm using on all of this is minute, absolutely tiny, and I found it's the textures which really flog the graphics card of the whichever PC you're using. Mine's are just a ordinary one, i6, Pentium i6, and as the processor, and I forget now what the graphics card is, but it's really nothing special at all. And you want to be able to run these, and you want to run quite a few of them maybe in a train. So, you know, the smaller the smaller is, the neater is, the better. It's the most effective. So that's the end of this second video, starting from scratch. I hope it's been of use. This is the situation you should be in if you follow this video, and your brain should be leaping ahead now to make the rest of the side. And in fact, I'm not going to carry on making that side, or indeed any of the details, because my third video will cover how I make the roof, the curve of the roof. And frankly, beyond that, it's a question of just making more and more little meshes and adding them in. But for a fourth one, what I'll probably do is show you how I would put in the words Northern Pacific. Okay, so that's the end of this video. I do hope it's been of use. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Please leave a comment if you wish. Please subscribe to my channel.